Christian, good to see you.
Good to be seen, Christian.
It's your birthday, or it's some kind of holiday for you, right?
A day after Halloween and my 43rd birthday, yes.
43, wow. I thought you were
43.
like 50.
I know. I look it.
Man,
Definitely
looking good, though, for 50. 43. 43.
I'm sure all our podcast listeners agree because they see us every
You sound
week.
You sound like a youthful 43.
Yes.
Don't worry, I look like I'm 16. So.
I know. I especially look young when I have to shave off my beard for my my National Guard drill weekend. So
You know, at least, though, you shaving off your beard is for... I mean, I think you earn points for why you shave off your beard, because it's military related.
it's true. It's true. We were kind of joking about how the longer a man's beard, the more trustworthy they are, and I feel kind of like an imposter when I have to shave it off. But I guess I'm kind of swapping it for
Yeah,
for a
I think
cause,
it's.
right?
I mean, I was gonna say like it's a wash.
Yeah.
But I think you actually get a point because you're doing something military related.
Oh, there you go. But who's keeping score, right?
Apparently, I am. Well, before we get into kind of the meat and potatoes of today's episode, why don't you grab your cigar? I know that I got mine, and we'll grab this whiskey here, and we'll get rolling. We are the Old Fashioned Dad Podcast, seeking to love dads and men through the person and work of Jesus Christ, while entering into tough conversations on marriage, mental health, sex, and parenting, all while sipping good whiskey. Well, we got a cigar, we got some whiskey. What are we sipping on today, actually? I know I'm the one that brought it.
Yes.
Why am I asking you that?
I don't know. It's dry fly straight wheat whiskey, cask strength.
Yeah, so Dry Fly, I've been really impressed with their stuff over the last year or so, but they're a Washington State whiskey, and they're based in Spokane.
Okay.
And I think, being from Washington State, we don't get a lot of real good bourbons up here. This is a Scotch town, and so...
And beer. Lots of
Yeah,
beer.
beer town too. Same with Portland.
Yep.
But Dry Fly has actually paved the way for a lot of distilleries to pop up now, and they've helped change some legislation around here to where you can have these small micro distilleries, and now you can actually do more than 2-ounce servings in tasting rooms here in Washington, whereas before you couldn't.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, Washington has some very antiquated laws
Interesting.
when it comes to spirits.
That's surprising considering how liberal the legislation tends to be.
Well, Washington tends to be liberal, just not in the right ways.
In all the wrong ways.
Yeah. Also, we're smoking on some cigars, courtesy. This might be it might be a one-time deal, but I hope it isn't.
Hopefully it's ongoing.
We are smoking on some cigars from My Cigar Pack. They reached out to me on my Denim and Whiskey channel, and I said, hey, I also have this podcast that I co-host, and they're like, hey, we'd love to work with you. So
Nice. So it's mycigarpack.com?
mycigarpack.com. They are a subscription service.
Nice.
And actually, I think they're a really good one too. We've worked with Standard and Twain before, and this one, My Cigar Pack, sends kind of a medley, if you could, I don't know, is that the right word? Medley? A variety of cigars. I think you get like 4 cigars each month. So, I don't know. What do you think of yours?
I like it. I mean, it's much better quality than the low bar crap I give you. When no, I mean, Thompson has some good stuff, but the stuff I get from them that we've been smoking has been kind of the more everyday smoke.
Yeah.
These are definitely higher quality. I can definitely tell by the draw is definitely
Very smooth and very even.
It's consistent burn, nice firm draw. On my other ones, it's a lot looser draw, and they tend to kind of unravel.
So I'm gonna probably butcher this. The cigar that I'm smoking is Dominican cigar, and it has an awesome label. Like, the label is like almost half the length of the actual cigar, but it's pronounced. Oh man, I'm gonna butcher this. La Galera, Galera. So I'm hoping I'm pronouncing that right. But for me, it's really smooth.
Yeah, it's like a medium.
Yeah, I would say me. And you know what? Mine came with it was pointed at the end.
Right.
Is there a name for that?
I'm sure that
You know, Tyler from the
Yeah, I'm
Honest
sure they
Cigar
would know
Experience would know.
over
You should probably
on
reach
the-
out to Tyler and ask him.
right
about
on
that.
the Honest Cigar Experience, but I am not knowledgeable enough on cigars to know all of the different names or all
I'm
that
ashamed
stuff.
of you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm smoking the San Latano, which is also a Dominican grown tobacco. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
I wonder what the wrapper is.
Tobacco.
You are a wordsmith. You just cut right through the bullshit and just get right there, don't you?
It's more ignorance, but whatever.
Do you think Tyler would be proud of us that we talked about the cigar like for more than like 2 seconds?
Hopefully, we're getting there. We're getting there.
We are. So a couple episodes back, I'm not sure if you remember.
If I remember, or if our listeners remember.
You know what? Either one.
Yeah.
We posed a question to the Honest Cigar Experience.
Yeah. It's pretty heady, pretty theological.
It was.
Yep.
It was very biblical in nature. And it was, which would you prefer, being a reverse centaur or a reverse mermaid? And I had to go. You know, they answered their. You know, to their credit, they answered the question, and
Which is a little surprising because it's pretty ridiculous, but I appreciate
it was
playing along.
It was. And I actually might have a question for them to answer in this podcast as well.
Oh, we do.
Oh,
And we also have our answers to their challenge.
And we do have our answer to their question. And I honestly love their question. It was
It made me LOL out loud. For
yeah,
real.
which was
Well, it's not ruined it here. We'll talk about that maybe. A little later.
I can't give the. Oh, okay.
Yeah,
all right.
we'll
We'll
talk
give
about that
the
a little
answer.
later in
We'll
the
give the
episode.
question and answer at the end.
Yeah, I think that
okay,
sounds good.
That
Force
that's
people
fair.
to listen to the whole episode.
That's fair. You know. Okay. So. That's actually probably the most we've spent talking about whiskey and cigars lately. We technically are a whiskey kind of podcast, but we've kind of moved to kind of making the whiskey a bit of an abbreviation in our podcast, and so it's always kind of good to come back to our roots and talk about the brown goodness that is whiskey.
Exactly. Try and balance out the topic and our whiskey that we are enjoying during our discussion.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Dude, is it crazy to you that we started this back in, did we start it in May or March or April, or I feel like it was May.
I'd have to look back at when our first one published. I mean, because we sat down for a whiskey to have our initial conversation over this.
We were just actually
January,
getting together just to
February?
hang out. That was
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
At the Tin Room.
Tin Room, yeah, which
Yeah.
is right here in Burien, if you're ever in town.
Yeah, come check out the Tin Room.
Yep.
But I think we had been planning to hang out, and schedules never really aligned. But we finally figured, hey, just make this happen. And I had that I had this idea for the podcast cooking in the back of my brain, and I was like sitting there thinking, Christian would be a really great guy to do this with. And lo and behold, it actually worked.
Yeah, no, it's pretty funny because I felt like I invited myself on as the co-host, but I think you were also thinking, hey, he's created podcasts before. You should help with the production.
I figured with our two minds,
we almost have a full mind.
3/4. I think you bring in the half here. I think I was like, man, this is a great. I mean, also it was a really great opportunity to have like regular, I would say, accountability, friendship,
Yeah.
Chance to smoke cigar, exchange theological ideas, and drink good whiskey. And I mean, I don't know if I need to like sell that anymore.
Yeah, no, I know we've mentioned it on other, at least one other episode, but it's ended up being pretty therapeutic for me. I mean, if any of you dads out there listening to this are anything like me, I probably don't get together with other guys and do the iron sharpens iron thing nearly as much as I should. I tend to become a lone ranger outside of going to church. But even then, I'm not really connecting on a deeper level with other guys.
Right.
So this has been very good to challenge me, encourage me to think about things. As a dad, as a Christian, what's going on with our culture and how we respond, and keep God and the gospel at the center, as opposed to whatever the emotional whim of our, cultural climate is. So.
Yeah, same here for me. Like, it's been real. I mean, like when I get together with other guys, it's very rarely it's going to be talking about some of these deeper issues.
Sure.
And if we do talk on these deeper issues, it's very much kind of like a punctuation on something else.
Sure.
Most of the time, I'm going to get together. I'm going to talk about a project. I'm going to talk about a business. Maybe I'll talk about church functioning. Maybe I'll talk about, just stuff that I would consider just surface level stuff.
Sure.
It's good
Very
stuff.
Task, practical oriented.
Yeah, but it's not like getting into emotions and faith and theology on a deep level.
Right. Yeah, and so hopefully to the listeners, it's interesting and beneficial just to kind of listen in on our conversation and know like there's other guys out there that struggle with the same things, have the same questions. That.
Oh, as long as we're talking about this and guys connecting and whatnot, I did have an opportunity. I didn't share this with you, but I did have an opportunity, I think it was last week, to talk with Tyler from the Honest Cigar Experience over the phone.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
I was wondering when that was going to happen because, so far I've only connected via Messenger on Instagram and whatnot. So.
Yeah. Tyler and I could definitely see myself, actually all of us, just sitting down at a bar having whiskey and just going to the wee hours.
Yeah. When are we going to Nashville? That's what I want to know.
I know, right? I know that he doesn't want to come back up here, and honestly, I don't want to be here.
I don't blame him. So, well, I'll be back on the East Coast in around the holidays. So,
maybe you can make your way down to Tennessee.
Maybe we'll be up to Tennessee. I think. Where's North Carolina compared to Tennessee? I think it's above North Carolina.
Is it? I don't know. My geography sucks right now.
Yeah. Was there a time that was better? Or?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, there wasn't. That's why I went into psychology. Gosh. But anyway, we got chatting about potentially doing a kind of a Zoom podcast, and so I think at some point we'll get maybe Tyler will listen to this podcast episode when it comes out, and he'll go, oh yeah, I got to send those guys an email.
Yeah, no, that'd be good. It'd be fun to maybe do like a little longer one and split it up. So you have to got the first half on one of our podcasts and the other half on the other podcast.
Yep. I think that's, we'll hammer out those logistics,
Sure.
but I think, your thinking is kind of where he's going.
Yeah.
But there was a point in the conversation, and I share this because I think it's interesting, so we started our podcast a few months before they started theirs.
Yep.
We're
OG.
What's that?
We're OG.
That's right. Ours was focused on whiskey, but obviously to bring, dads and topics around dads and men, to the forefront into the podcast. And so, the Seahawks must have won or something. I hear fireworks.
Is that what that is? I'm like, man,
I know.
Gunshots going off.
I mean, I anticipate a civil war here, but not yet.
Right. Hopefully those are just fireworks.
Yeah, I hope so. Those, you know what a mortar round sounds like.
Yeah, it's much louder than that.
Yeah, great. Good. So he was telling me that he's also met with or talked with at least one other grouping or two groupings of people that have also started podcasts with a similar premise that are also Christians.
Nice.
And that are really kind of just like, as Christians, we don't care for we don't like how people are responding, especially even just Christians within the church. And so they are creating these podcasts to kind of say, hey, this is what we are about, and this is how we are thinking, and, honestly, to be encouraging and loving to other Christians, and as well as loving to other people that just simply don't know Christ.
Sure.
And so I thought that was interesting that more of these types of backyard podcasts are starting to pop up.
Right. Well, because that must be what he was talking about and alluding to on, I think it was episode 11 of the Honest Cigar Experience, which I was just listening to, commuting to and from GBLM for my drill weekend. Because he was talking about that, kind of this time of pandemic, and people are like, well, what do I do with my time? Let's start a podcast. Let's, and they were specifically addressing, as Christians, despite our political affiliation, our higher calling is to love people, to be long-suffering, to be kind. There's no excuse for falling into the world's trap of, well, you don't agree with me, therefore I'm going to destroy you,
Right.
Whether that's on social media or in person or whatever, or
Yeah.
unfriend you or whatever. Like that is not what God calls us to in any shape or form. You know.
No, and I think that is obviously being lost in all the political upheaval, the social upheaval, and I don't know, I'm kind of grateful more and more for this podcast, and I'm grateful for the other podcasts that I think are popping up, and maybe that's, I don't know, I think, dare I say, God, going like, hey, my body is, you know, the people that believe in me, that call themselves Christians, are acting like toddlers and being kind of reprehensible in the way that they worship me and show themselves to non-worshipers. I'm going to create these little small pockets all over the country of people that are going to sit in their backyard and talk about me.
Sure, little mini revivals of encouragement and
Yeah.
reminders of God's truth, hopefully.
It was just cool. I mean, like, never did I think I'd be talking to two guys down in Tennessee that are like-minded like this. But I mean, it makes sense because, you know, the body is big and vast.
Sure.
And so there has to be like-minded people.
Right. Yeah, and it spans the globe. It's not just like, you know, English-speaking
Right.
countries or whatever. Like, I was just looking at the analytics, you know, our stats for the podcast, and I always see the majority of them are in North America. But then we got like some in Brazil, and you got some in Japan and Spain, and
Oh, nice.
and Netherlands and stuff. So it's just interesting, you know. Like in Turkey. And I'm
Yeah,
just like,
right.
That's interesting. Maybe actually they clicked on the wrong podcast, but but it's just interesting, kind of seeing like, you know, what we're talking about in the, you know, little town of Burien here outside of Seattle. Like, other people are finding it and hopefully being encouraged by it around the world.
Yeah. Which means that, I mean, we have something relevant to say. I mean, I don't know, maybe at some point we'll stop having some relevant stuff to say. We'll run out of we haven't run out of topics yet, so that's interesting.
It's surprising. Well, I'm sure we'll revisit. I mean, there's going to be overlap between episodes and stuff, and I'm sure we'll revisit things. I mean, one of the things I'm fond of is not to get too far off on, you know, rabbit trail, whatever, is the idea of, like, I think as Christians, because we don't have to be self-sufficient, we have the freedom to be humble and adjust and learn and admit when we're wrong or whatever. You know, I don't remember who it was. It's probably some, you know, famous theologian or something, but, you know, they're talking about how basically we always need to be willing to learn and self-correct. You know, because, like, hopefully where I'm at in my walk with Christ now is more mature and developed and closer to God than it was 10 years ago, than it was 20 years ago. And if I believe the exact same thing I believe now that I did 10 years ago, that's a sign I'm not growing. It's a sign that I'm stagnant and I'm stuck in my ways, and that I'm not open to learning from others or from God. So I think it's just something like, it helps keep us humble, hopefully, that we're able to adjust as we learn, as God shows us, as planes fly overhead.
It's a common background noise that I've gotten used to, and albeit kind of love. Christian's like, I hate it.
Yeah. I wish my wife felt the same. She's like, our next house. I'm like, our next house is going to be wild. Yeah. So to our topic today.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not really sure what our topic is. I think.
Well, I think you. I mean, I kind of presented one, but I think it. You know, I think it could use a little bit more fleshing out, anyways. And that was on building and protecting. But, you know, maybe that's again for a soon-to-be future episode. But there might be something to talking about you getting older.
I'm the only one getting older.
I'm not getting older.
Yeah, nope, I'm the only
I don't think I'm getting older.
Yeah. I mean, I thought
Should we talk about that?
I thought it might be interesting to talk about.
Should we talk about
hopefully. Maybe in the context of, I mean, obviously we're all getting older.
Yeah.
We all will die someday. Hopefully, most of us
What?
who are listening to this
Are you serious?
will be with Jesus when that
We're gonna.
happens.
Oh my
Yeah, we're gonna
gosh.
die. Newsflash.
Does everybody know about this?
I hope so.
Holy
hope so.
smokes.
Actually, speaking about that, I saw a Facebook ad came across my feed the other day that I thought was interesting, and I'm like, theologically, like, is this accurate? Is this like a good thing? It was, I forget the name of it, but it was basically like a wall calendar that basically had the weeks of your life. And like each week you marked off a thing, and basically like, it was assuming an 80-year lifespan or whatever. Oh. And the idea was basically to show your life within the context of like, where are you going with your life? You've got a limited time. Are you living it in the context as a Christian? Are you living as a Christian? Are you making a difference? Are you leaving a legacy? Are you just doing what the world kind of does and like just trying to keep from being bored? Playing video games, watching TV, whatever, like wasting the time that God's given us, Yeah. And I thought that was interesting. I wasn't really planning on talking about that, but I was thinking, like, would that be helpful for me to have like a reminder of my finiteness on earth? That I don't have unlimited time.
Do you forget about your finiteness on earth?
I think,
because I feel like I'm constantly reminded of it.
I mean, I think it's at least for me, owning a business and being a dad and a husband and stuff, it's really easy to get lost in the weeds, and so when you do that, you kind of lose the big picture, and so something like that I think might be helpful to remind you that like God's only giving you so much time on this earth, make it count. We have one life to live, and don't squander it. But I don't know. I mean, that wasn't really the direction I was planning on going this. I was more thinking as...
Well, we're freestyling here. So,
we're
riffing. Every trail that we go down is going to be relevant, and our listeners just have to kind of sit with it and be subjected to it. So,
sure. I mean, do you have any initial thoughts on like that kind of idea of like a reminder of like you're ticking off your weeks or your days, until God calls you home, if you will?
There was a period of time, I think of last year, where I might have been in kind of this mild funk, maybe albeit a depression, where just, Julia was going to grad school, and I was just ticking off the days, working at the practice, and kids were going to school, and it just like that was just the rhythm, and time was just, it just felt like passing by, and my wife and I were not connecting very much. It was just, felt like two ships passing in the night.
Yeah.
Which, interestingly enough, I've never been on a ship while another ship passed in the night. So
would you know if they did?
I know, yeah. Just like the whole tree falling in the forest. I don't know.
Right. What's the sound of one hand clapping?
Yeah. The sayings that we say.
Yeah.
But during that time, I don't want to say that I became nihilistic, but I definitely felt like I was very connected to, Ecclesiastes.
Okay. Everything's meaningless.
Yeah, everything's meaningless. And I mean, I had to do some study on that, but I kind of just was like, man, what? So I worked this hard to get to this point where I've got the house, I've got the kids,
sure,
I've got the marriage, I've got the things, I've got the bank account and all that. And now is this just what I'm going to do now? Like, just for the next 80 years? Like, this feels kind of depressing, because I'm just getting old now. And, like, pains in my body are reminding me that I'm old. And, I don't know, it felt really hard for me to kind of really want to put any kind of thought into leaving kind of a robust legacy. Like, I knew that I was going to leave one. Like, I'm.
Well, we're all going to leave a legacy. It's either going to be good or bad or mediocre.
I think during that time I was just like, well, it's just going to be a medium one.
Yeah.
That's just what it's going to be. But I think that I think I was being challenged in my oldness. That like when you're young. I apologize if this sounds like I'm all over the place, but like when you're young,
yeah,
what's put in front of you is kind of almost a to-do list. Seems like it goes on forever, and you don't ever think that you kind of reach that point of like, well, I've done everything.
Yeah.
Now it's just a matter of continuing to do all the things that when you're young, you will do eventually one day. And now I'm here.
Sure. You've been adulting for years.
Yeah. Now I'm here. I'm doing all the adult things. And is this what old people do?
Yeah.
You know, till retirement, and then what? What's the point of this?
Sure. Well, and I assume most people go through, you know.
I'm not there anymore, by the way.
That's good. You're here.
Yeah.
I think most people go through some sort of, you know, existential crisis, if you will, or, you know, called a midlife crisis or early life crisis, you know, some sort of, you know, hopefully self-reflection of like, what is this all for? What's this all about? For me, that drives me to God, you know, and because really at the end of the day, from my perspective, if there is no God and we're just here for, you know,
Shits and
wine,
giggles.
sex, and pleasure, then it doesn't really matter what you do.
Yeah,
you know?
exactly. Morality is out the window.
Yeah, I mean, there's really no such thing as morality, you know, like
None.
It really comes down to, you know, kind of the brutality of, you know, evolutionary thinking, you
Yeah.
know, the survival of the fittest and all that. I had a couple of thoughts like when you were talking that I wanted to touch on. I'm trying to remember what they were though. So you know, being my age, I was in my early 20s when Fight Club came out, you know, the movie, and
Love Fight Club.
and I think, you know, at that time, it seemed to really speak to young Christian men and maybe the culture at large, because it, not necessarily in a good way, but it did address kind of that, like, what's this all about? You know, because if you remember kind of the opening, you know, first quarter of it was, you know, Edward Norton was basically like, you know, he'd gotten all the things, he had his condo and he had it all decked out with his IKEA stuff and it was all perfect and he'd made it.
He's sitting on the toilet and he's like ordering things from the IKEA catalog.
Yeah. You know, he'd arrived.
Right.
And, you know, and the story shifted when, you know, he basically decided to like destroy all of it and take on this alter ego, and to live life, you know, fully and richly, and like get rid of all the material stuff,
Right.
and like not just be a cog in, you know, this game of life, and then, you know, you acquire all the stuff and then you die. And I think, you know, that the message of that movie is very nihilistic, you know, obviously not centered in God, but I think some of those human experiences are universal. It's just a matter of like how you respond to it, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, I think as Christians, we're to respond in it in a self-reflective way of rejecting that in a sense of like my goal in life is not comfort. You know, it's not to accumulate things. It's not to acquire status. Like those things in and of themselves aren't bad, but if that is your end goal, you know, those things are not going to make great or satisfying gods.
Right.
You know, those idols. I think as you get older, you know, you by God's grace, He kind of opens up your eyes to that a little bit more, hopefully, you know. But I still feel like that struggle or tension, you know, like, you know, I own a house and we just spend some money doing like landscaping and stuff. And it's like, in the grand scheme of things, that stuff doesn't matter,
Right.
you know. But it, you know, really comes down to like what's God calling us to individually, and then collectively as Christians and as men and fathers, right?
Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
I know I'm kind of interrupting your train of thought here,
No,
but
I'm glad I was.
You're
my
running
train
out of
thought was
steam on that one.
derailing.
So I got three questions, and I want to ask them all three to you, but and I'll certainly answer them too. But is why do you think this topic, you know, that we're kind of talking about, age, you know, there's kind of multi topics here. It's a little multifaceted,
Sure,
I should
yep.
say. But we're kind of talking about getting older, right? Why do you think this is important or relevant for dads?
I think it's relevant specifically in the Western culture and American culture because I don't think we're set up as a society to deal well with death. Like
I'd agree with that.
everything
Yeah, I'd agree with
is kind of set up to like help you forget that you're gonna die someday.
Yeah, when you get old, you get moved into an old folks' home, and that's where the death happens.
Yeah, I mean, whatever that process looks like. I think it matters because we do have a limited time on this earth, and we are all as Christians called to something.
Yeah.
There's like general things we're called to as Christians, but then
Right.
there's specific things that God calls us to. And if we get sucked into the values of our culture, we're going to be living for comfort and ease, parenting out of that, which is going to probably lead to kids that don't grow up to be well-adjusted, respectful young human beings. Because instead of doing the hard thing and disciplining, you let them do what they want, because that's much easier than spending the time to correct, not just behavior but heart issues. Did that kind of answer your question? I kind of got sidetracked. Why does it matter?
Yeah, why is it relevant to dads to talk about age? I can tell you what I think.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so I think anytime that you talk about age, really for anybody, it does implicate legacy. It implicates like positions on stewardship.
Yeah.
It implicates your worldview.
Sure.
Most people, I would say, generally tend to live for themselves, and we see this. We see this with kids.
Right.
When they're born, all the way, I don't know, at least for the first 10 years, they are all about themselves. And
some people never grow out of that. So.
What's that?
Some people never grow out of that.
That's true. But so why is this relevant for dads? I think because whether you like it or not as a dad, getting older does eventually mean that you're closer to physical death. It does also mean that you got to come to grips with and come to terms with what do you believe about God, and if you do believe in Jesus Christ, that obviously implicates how you steward your family and how it is that you're setting up your family for success after you are gone, and not success just in a financial way, but success in a relational way, success in being able to worship God. So when we talk about this topic of getting older, like all of that to me, I think is implicated in this topic and is relevant to dads.
Sure. You mentioned legacy there, and I think that's kind of a key component as dads of like something that's should be like a driving factor, in our thinking. Because if you look at what the culture in general looks at as legacy, we tend to idolize and worship people like Bill Gates, Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, people that change the world.
Yeah, and
right?
have a ton of money.
Yeah, and they have a ton of money because of that, which is great. But of all the people that are going to leave legacies in the world, that's 0.001% of the population.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean, like if God's calling you that, to deny that. But the reality is, as Christians and as dads, our legacy is probably going to look a lot more like, they were, I was there for my kids, sports games, and I didn't lose my shit and yell at them all the time, and I wasn't angry. I didn't belittle my wife, like it's going to look like no one outside of, maybe having conversations with a good friend like you, no one outside your house is really going to know that.
Right.
And we need to be okay with that because, culturally, if it didn't happen on Instagram or Facebook, did it really happen? Yeah. So, I think we need to make sure that our definition of legacy and significance and success as dads, husbands, business owners, workers, needs to be in the context of the whole world may not be changed by my legacy, but the people who God put in my life, they'll notice, and their life will be better, and their kids' lives will be better, so on and so forth.
And I'll tell you what. On that point that you're making there, like you may not have a global impact as a dad,
right.
As a husband, but if more dads are responding with, "Hey, I'm going to love Christ, and I'm going to lead my family in humility and operate from a place of like Christ is above all and is in all and owns all, so I'm just here stewarding it," if we have more dads doing that, then the collective good really does amount to something big.
Right.
You know.
Right. And the key to that is the focus is on making Jesus' names great. Jesus' name great,
Yes.
not ours.
Yes. Yeah, and I think this has profound impacts on mental health. It has profound impacts on stewarding financial wealth, profound impacts on conducting business, and relational equity and health.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. No, great, fantastic point. You ready for the second question?
Well, I don't know if I can handle more than one, but
I
go
know,
ahead.
I know. I think you might be up for it. It's your birthday.
All right.
This might be a backtracking a little bit because you might have answered it already in some of what we said, but what do you think the world's response is to getting old? I can tell you the world's response to getting old is to stay as young as you can get.
Right. Yeah. Well, and that's we keep kind of referring back to like the world or culture, whatever. Obviously referring to American culture because different countries and different cultures have
Sure.
different views on age and whatnot. Definitely in America, we worship youthfulness. From the makeup to the way you look to the way you act to the way you dress, and so we tend to be guilty of ageism, where like the older someone gets, the less relevant, maybe the stupider.
They're not useful.
They're not tech savvy. They're not useful.
They're not beautiful.
Right. Maybe they're slower at using a computer. Whatever it is.
Yeah.
In this particular moment in time. I feel that myself too. Like the people I like working with tend to be people more like myself, in a sense of tech savvy, urban. Like I can speak their language. I understand what they care about. It's easier to work with because of the tools I use. Whatever. But I think as a overall mentality, I think that's not good. You look at Scripture and it talks about parents respecting and listening to, the kids respecting and listening to their parents.
Right.
Because if you don't, you could be stoned. It's a big deal. And in general, it talks about the wisdom that comes with age.
Mm-hmm.
Now, obviously, that's a blanket statement. That's not always true. I know plenty of old people that are bitter and nasty and as foolish as your
You know some too?
18-year-old. Yeah, I know some of those too.
I know a few.
But I think we do well to glean from the wisdom and experience of our elders. Which
100% agree.
Being I can't really deny it anymore. I'm healthily into middle age. I'm no longer as young as I.
Not a spring
feel
chicken, bro.
I know. And I think being middle age, there's while my primary calling and responsibility is to my family, I think it's also to younger men. To speak into their lives. Hopefully this podcast does this, but this podcast doesn't require anything of me. There's no sacrifice. I'm just getting together and hitting record and having conversations, as opposed to investing in younger men at my church or that God puts in my life or in the workplace.
Sure.
Which requires the intentionality to it, and realizing that there's a value to it. And on the other side, it's proactively looking for those older, wiser Christian men in your life to glean from.
Right.
Whether that's informally as friends or more formally as a mentor or business coach or whatever.
Yeah, no, I well said, honestly. I don't know if that I have anything to add to, to the world's response to getting older, but I agree with you. I think that the world is, America is adverse to death.
Is what?
To adverse,
adverse, yeah.
like averse. I always kind of.
I'm averse to death. I don't really want to die, but
yeah, I mean,
we just don't deal with it well.
Yeah, we do everything we can to normalize it, kind of put it into the corner and put it over there so that we don't have to necessarily deal with it, and
Sure. Which I think, I think spiritually it has some big implications, but I think practically it has some big implications too, because if we're not willing to be honest about the reality that we all die, we tend not to plan for it. We tend to live in the moment and not think about the future. Whether that's legacy, financially, taking care of our family after we're gone, or even thinking about. I mean, I was thinking the other day for my son. You know, like I plan on living, you know, a long time, but who knows what may happen. You know, I was thinking like it might be interesting to have a episode where we talk about like what are, you know, 3 things you want your kids to like never forget that you'd want to pass down to them wisdom wise or principle wise. And it's kind of interesting because like something like this podcast can like document, you know, this time in my life for my kid in 20 years,
Absolutely.
40 years, you know. Like,
You could go back and listen to it.
right.
Yeah.
I mean, he may roll his eyes the whole time, who knows, but
Consequently,
but thinking forward, thinking ahead, you know, not just living for the here and now.
yeah, and I think that is a good segue into my final question that I wanted to ask. And I think if I wanted to pass something on to my daughters, it would be how to determine a good whiskey from a bad whiskey.
That's important. Life choices.
But I think we've been kind of, you know, talking about it a little bit, especially in our answer to what is the world's response. But I mean, what is a godly response to getting older? You know, like there is a godly response, you know, and what is it? You know, I think we've been kind of discussing that with perspective on legacy and wisdom and discernment and stewardship.
Yeah.
You know, I think. But I mean, what do you think? You know, if there's any, I know that you're not necessarily going to give anything more than what you've said, but maybe it's an emphasis.
Well, I'd say as men, we're pretty fortunate because, you know, our hair will turn gray or white. We'll get distinguished, you know.
So you're saying we're gonna get sexier?
Yeah, we're gonna get sexier.
Right.
Which at least culturally, most women don't think that they're gonna get sexier with age. Even though I think my wife's super hot, but whatever.
Yeah, my wife feels the same way, and I'm just like, you look smoking hot.
Yeah. So hopefully, you know, all the fathers out there, all the dads, husbands feel that way about your spouse. But all joking aside, I don't know if I really have much to add other than what I've already said before. I mean, I guess not fighting it, you know, because I mean, it's the way. I mean, yes, the death is a result of the fall of sin, but there's a way I think to age gracefully.
Yeah.
In wisdom as opposed to in folly and bitterness and resentment. You know, I mean, it's common. You know, I think we've thrown out several kind of, you know, silly cliche sayings in our culture. And, you know, one of them is the whole, you know, time heals all wounds.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the stupidest things I've ever heard.
Yeah.
Because usually if it's not dealt with and repented of and forgiveness doesn't happen, it leads to bitterness and resentment and
Keep
years
wounding
of
yourself.
counseling and, you know.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, might be good for your profession if they keep coming to you, you know.
Means more
For
business.
counseling, yeah. But I don't know. I don't know if I have a super profound or tangible word on that.
So I don't know that there's necessarily been a point in time where I can tangibly say that I've been afraid of death.
Sure. I've actively done things that could very easily lead to my death.
But I think I can kind of sit here, maybe this is the first time I've actually articulated it this way, but I think that if you don't have Jesus Christ, then I understand your fear of death.
Yeah.
I'm not looking forward to dying. I really am not. And I know that death could happen at any moment. And I know that God has outlined, for lack of a better term, the days that I have. Mm-hmm. So far, I've had 39 years. I hope to have 43 years. I hope to have 50. I hope to have 80. I hope to have 90.
Sure.
My grandmother, when she passed, she was almost 101. This was a couple years ago.
Wow.
And she just, I mean, simply died of old age. But
Yeah.
I remember talking to her when she was like 95. Smart as a whip.
Yeah.
Another weird saying that I don't understand either. Smart as a whip.
Yeah, how smart are whips?
How smart are whips?
When was the last time you saw a whip? Indiana Jones.
I think so. I think that sounds about right. But I asked her how she felt being 95, and she goes, "I didn't think I would live this long."
Yeah.
You know, and maybe that's just a product of her generation. I don't know, or maybe that's just her individually. But I know for me, I'm like, man, I hope I have a long life. I really do.
Yeah.
You know, because I think about what Paul says. For me to die is gain. I think I'm saying this right. For me to die is gain, but for me to live is Christ. Man, if I get 90 years on this planet, in this existence, to live, that's 90 years of me trying to show Christ,
Sure.
trying to live for Christ and having an impact for Christ.
Right. Your grandkids are going to be like, Grandpa, tell us about the times before the internet.
What was life like before cell phones?
Yeah. Before
Let me
robots,
tell you, Sonny.
Before robots did everything for you.
Come on over here and let me tell you a story that doesn't have to do with a hologram. Anyway, but I think a godly response is like, I think there is some looking forward to getting old. You know, like yes, there is infirmities, there's afflictions, and all that stuff that comes with the breakdown of the body.
Sure.
But I don't think that those necessarily need to be feared or become the sole focus of our existence when we still have Christ.
Yeah.
And we can be, man, we can still leave behind such a great legacy for Christ.
Right.
Even in our old age. And so, yeah, I think there's a fantastic godly response that is just mired in stewardship.
I mean, as you're talking, I mean, one thing that comes to mind is, talking about like a godly response to getting old. I think a lot of it comes back to adopting God's view of life and the purpose of human life, which as Christians, should involve like the dignity of life, right?
Yep.
I think we tend to think about it in terms of like abortion, right? Kind of the great evils of mass killing of unborn babies.
Yep.
But I think on the other end of life, it also applies. As a culture, it seems like the value is in how smart you are or how capable you are,
Sure.
how competent you are to contribute to society.
The visible things.
Right.
Yeah.
But once you get old and retire and you're no longer, quote, contributing to society,
Yep.
there tends to be this definite drop-off of, well, let's just kill them.
You're not really useful anymore.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, oh, they're not all there, or they're, can't physically take care of themselves. Like, what value do they have?
Right.
And I think as Christians, our response should be very different. It should be their value is in their identity as a child of God, not as their ability to practically contribute to what society says is important.
Yeah, I you know what? Honestly, I think I hadn't thought about that until now. I think what you're saying is true because like I have such an aversion to abortion, because it's literally the killing of another human being that is an image bearer of God.
Right.
And so if we take that same perspective and apply it to how we respond to old people
Yep.
or elderly people or people in their old age, it's like, do we see them the same way that they are image bearers of God?
Right. Right. Well, and I was thinking about it in kind of the context of, it's not super hot political topic right now, but occasionally it comes up, kind of the, euthanasia, I think that's the right term,
Yeah.
kind of the basically, if someone gets to a certain point and wants to die, you should let them die, or you should kill them, or,
They're right.
assisted suicide, if
Right.
you will. And I think that is a slap in the face to God as to, God basically says, like, it's not yours to take life. That's his.
Yeah.
and it could be, an emotional and tough and complicated issue because, Alzheimer's runs in my wife's family. All of my wife's mom, so I guess all of the, like her parents died of Alzheimer's, all of her siblings died of Alzheimer's, and right now her mom has, early onset Alzheimer's. And that's really tough to watch.
Yeah.
Like physically she's doing fine, but she's just she can't talk anymore, can't have a conversation, she doesn't know where she is. You got to watch her, and it's really sad, but I think the world would say, well, if there's no one to take care of her, go ahead and
euthanasia.
pump her full of some drug and let her peacefully die in her sleep, as opposed to keeping her alive until Alzheimer's takes her. I think it's something we need to grapple with, and not adopt the world's view of older older folk don't have a place in this world, you know.
Yeah, and I honestly think there's cultures out there that do a better job of, I suppose, revering older generations and
Sure.
keeping them, revering them and treating them with the kind of the dignity and respect that I think inherently is still there from when they were born. I think American culture does not, again, I think to, emphasize one of your points earlier is American culture does not do a very good job of esteeming, I guess, these, elderly people, because
Right.
youth is the thing to be prized, and success and money is all, that's a young person's thing. And so that's, when you're 20 to, I don't know, maybe 50, that's where you're most useful.
Sure.
You
That's
know.
when you'd be making most of your money, doing most of your business stuff and whatever else. But
Right, yeah. So yeah, anyways, those are my thoughts, I think, on godly response, worldly response,
Yeah.
relevance to dad.
all right. Well, on that note,
On that note, just wrap that up.
yeah. Hopefully it was helpful conversation to the listeners. It's kind of interesting to take ideas that are floating around your head and kind of outline them. But on to more important things.
Yes, we do have something to attend to.
Yes. So
Are you ready to do this?
I think so. So what was our? Did we recover what our question was?
Yeah.
To them.
Yeah.
Michelle and
So kind
Tyler?
of circling back, like I said in the beginning, the On a Cigar experience posed a question to us,
Right. In response to our challenge to them.
to our challenge, and so the question was, it was kind of a either or, and which would you prefer is to fight 100 duck-sized horses, or was it like 10?
No, one horse-sized duck.
One horse. I feel like it was one horse-sized duck.
Yeah.
I mean, I got to give them, like, on a scale of 1 to 10 on creativity, like a 20.
It's pretty good. It
Yeah.
made me laugh.
That made me chuckle
Yeah.
a lot. I'm going to think about it for days.
Yeah.
I've already thought about it for days. I'm going to continue to think
Yeah.
about it.
Well, and if our listeners want to go back and listen to the On a Cigar Experience episode where they answer and then ask, that is episode 11, I believe.
Yep. You know what? I went with 100 duck-sized horses.
Why?
I just feel like I could kick them better.
Okay.
I still kind of felt like I would maybe get overwhelmed after about, like, taking out 50 of them.
Yeah.
Because then there'd be like 50 left.
Yeah.
But I just felt like my odds would probably be better against smaller creatures.
Okay.
As weird as that is, 100
Yeah.
duck-sized horses. Yeah, I don't know. The horse-sized duck, bro. I don't even know.
Yeah, that sounds vicious. I mean, have you ever been bitten by a duck? It's
It
no
doesn't
joke.
feel good.
No, they'll chase you. And this is a
Big
regular
big
sized
wingspan. I mean, it's basically a horse-sized duck's basically this dragon.
duck. Yeah, it's basically like a centaur, but with a horse bill.
Yeah,
A Pegasus, if you will.
I don't know. I just feel like I would get kicked in the face by this horse-sized duck.
Did
And
ducks
that'd be that.
kick? I don't think ducks kick. Maybe I'll step on you. So I was thinking, and it really depends on what my tools are at my disposal. If it's just my hands, I'm in trouble.
Okay.
But I was thinking, if I'm allowed to have, I don't know, a firearm of choice, I would pick the. Maybe that's cheating. I would pick the horse-sized duck, because
Would you use a shotgun with horse shot? Horse shot.
Horse shot. That's nice. I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know if it'd work, but I was thinking that because if I had a gun against 100, I mean, you're trying to hit him and a lot of reloading and. The shotgun, I guess, might be effective. But.
It's like a cavalry that's approaching you off the
Yeah.
off the top of a hill or something like that. Maybe you could just pick them off.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. It kind of feels like the question given to the Ghostbusters. What's choose your means of death, and they choose the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. There's no winning. You're gonna die. I don't know. That's my thought.
I feel like my odds of dying against 100 duck-sized horses, are less than against a horse-sized duck.
Yeah, it's probably true. And that's why you're going to live longer than me. You make better choices.
Speaking of old age, Grandpa, tell us that time that you got attacked by 100 horse-sized ducks. Let me tell you,
Duck-sized horses.
Christian H was there, and he had his AR-15.
Yeah.
He didn't survive,
Yeah,
though.
he didn't make it. My legs are all scarred up.
His
but
sacrifice allowed me to live.
nice.
So I kind of have a question for them.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
We'll keep this going, I guess.
All right.
Um,
And we'll just apologize to Chad and Tyler right now because with the timing of everything, I think we've gone like 3 episodes before responding to this.
yeah,
But
yeah.
we eventually responded. So.
We'll eventually get around to it. And maybe we'll get on a rhythm where we can be replying to them each episode or week, but that might require some level of
every other week,
coordination.
but yeah, whatever.
So the question is, another would you rather, or which would you prefer? If you could choose between 2 superpowers, and I'll name them, what would they be? And the superpowers are this. I'm really glad that I get to say this on a podcast. You can shoot spaghetti out of your fingertips anytime you want, and as much as you want, whenever you want. Okay,
With sauce or dry?
unlimited.
Okay.
We'll say spaghetti out of one hand and sauce out of the other.
Okay.
Yep. Really out of the fingertips more than anything else.
Okay. Yep.
So if you don't like somebody, you just cover them in spaghetti. You get hungry, you just spaghetti in the mouth.
Yeah.
The other one is every time you reach into really any pockets on your pants, doesn't matter what pocket it is, anytime you reach into the pocket, you always pull out a $20 bill. Always a $20 bill. You can reach in as many times as you want, pull out a $20 bill.
Okay.
Yeah. So those are, odd superpowers.
Yeah.
Odd superpowers.
Are there consequences of that? Like, if you pull out too much, does that cause national inflation rate to go up, or?
No.
Okay.
This is very simple.
Okay,
There's
I'm
no
overthinking it.
There's no real parameters to this one.
Gotcha.
Whereas there was kind of, you had to think through kind of some bad choices with, the reverse centaur, reverse mermaid.
Sure.
Which I'm always going reverse centaur. I mean, reverse mermaid, you have the head of a fish and the legs of a human
Yeah,
being.
it'd just be awkward.
You're gonna get eaten right away. You can't swim fast in the
Right.
ocean. Come on.
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah, that's the question I'm gonna put out there. You and I don't have to necessarily answer that, but
Well, it's a done deal in my head. That's an easy one.
okay,
But
gotcha.
I'll reserve my thoughts.
We'll wait till they answer, I
Yep.
suppose, and then we'll go back over to it. But on a cigar experience, there's your question.
Boom. Gauntlet is laid.
There it is. Well, Christian, I think we've can put a check mark next to this episode in
Yep.
the episode book. And happy birthday.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Funny thing is, I actually forgot it was my birthday until yesterday, and my wife reminded me.
Is that a product of old age?
It might be my mind slipping. It could just be that I've adopted the world's perspective that as I get older, I'm trying to.
You're not really useful anymore.
Yeah, I'm not useful anymore, and I'm just trying to avoid the inevitable
Okay.
thought of death.
I was also going to talk to you. I was going to find a younger co-host for this.
Yeah,
thing.
I don't blame you. I don't blame you.
Dads, we love you. We care about you. As always, we'd love to hear from you on the socials, Instagram page, Facebook page. Consequently, I'm slowly but surely, and I think Christian's going to try and help me figure this out, put together a website
Okay.
that does have some more content on it, maybe potentially in the future. I've yet to decide on this one.
Okay.
A blog component.
Well, I can do that. But I built out a WordPress for my local podcast when I was doing that, so I can walk you through that.
It's not a matter of making it available. It's a matter of just generating the content all the time.
You can do it pretty automatically, but we'll work it out.
I think we could. Yeah, I think we could too. But I think we are right now. The site is live. There isn't much on it, but it's ChristianBringOffPhotography.com, and it's going to be kind of under the moniker of Denim and Whiskey. That's just kind of all the social stuff and content stuff that's around what I do. But it made sense to kind of make a homepage for all of that sort of stuff and the Old Fashioned Dad podcast. Maybe it might make more sense down the future to have a dedicated, website, the Old Fashioned Dad podcast. But for right now, that's where it's at, and you're free to kind of peruse it. And if there's something you'd like to see on it, we'd certainly love to hear from you. But in the meantime, we're praying for you. Connect with us. Get involved in your local church. Don't be afraid of getting older. Leave a great legacy. Drink some good whiskey. Smoke a good cigar. And that's it for now.